Welcome to an online training on developing phonological and phonemic awareness. I'm Jodine Smith and I'll be your trainer for today. The objectives of this training are to define phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, to understand the development progression, to know strategies and activities for explicitly teaching phonological and phonemic awareness, and to know strategies and activities that indirectly teach phonological and phonemic awareness. They say that a picture tells 1,000 words, and in this case it's absolutely true. This is an image of Scarborough's reading rope, and it beautifully demonstrates how multifaceted literacy is and how many components have to come together for skilled reading to happen. Notice that phonological awareness is one of the many strands that are needed to be woven together with other strands for skilled reading to occur. So let's talk about what phonological awareness is. Phonological awareness is an umbrella term that covers many sound awareness skills needed for reading development. All the terms under the umbrella are aspects of phonological awareness. They each relate to the ability to work with the parts of words. Notice that phonemic awareness is one of the skills under the umbrella of phonological awareness. Here is the umbrella again, but I've rearranged the skills under the umbrella a bit. I've isolated phonemic awareness on one side. Remember that it still falls under phonological awareness. You will notice that I have now revealed more skills that fall under phonemic awareness, including phoneme isolation and identity, segmentation, blending, and manipulation. Here is another way of thinking about the relationship between phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. The goal is for students to attain phonemic awareness, the most nuanced and important level, by the end of first grade, if not well before. The reason phonemic awareness development is crucial is that English is predominantly an alphabetic orthography, one in which written symbols represent phonemes. Children are best positioned to understand the logic of and gain independence with the English written system when they are aware that spoken language consists of phonemes. Phonemic awareness is crucial for developing an understanding of the alphabetic principle, which is that individual sounds in words can be represented by letters or groups of letters in print. Phonological awareness refers to a global awareness of sounds in spoken language and the ability to manipulate those sounds. So, even though we are going to look at words today, students will not ever look at words in a purely phonological awareness activity. This will change as students begin to attach letters to sounds, and the activity intentionally becomes a phonics activity. Phonological awareness is often described as an activity that can be done in the dark and sitting on your hands. This means that no print will be involved, either by reading it or writing it. As literate adults, it is difficult for us not to associate a word with the idea of a word, including how it is spelled. And that is precisely how phonological awareness leads to better reading and spelling, because we have associated the individual sounds with letters to be able to read them. Okay, look at the image on the next slide, but don't read the word. Just look at the image. You didn't read the word, did you? Of course you did. And because now that you have read it, you cannot unread the image of the word. Okay, let's try another one. Look at the image, but don't read. Again, you probably read the sentence on the page because as your eyes were looking at the illustration, your eyes caught the words too. And your eyes likely didn't move from word to word, but rather took in the whole sentence. Okay, this time name the colors you see on the next slide. Did you name blue, yellow, green, and red? Not too bad. Okay, try one more. Name the colors you see on the next slide. This was probably a little harder and slower because our brains were looking at the color and reading the words, but they contradicted each other. So that's what happens when literate adults who are fluent readers look at text. But where does this all start for students? Phonological awareness. Let's dig in a little deeper. Phonological awareness is that encompassing term that involves working with how the sounds of spoken language can be broken down into components such as words, syllables, onsets and rhymes, and phonemes. Notice in the chart how the components go from the largest units of sound to the smallest units of sound. The largest unit is at the sentence level. Sentences are made of words. Words are comprised of syllables and can also be broken down into onsets and rhymes. Phonemes are the smallest units of sound within words. In April of 2000, the National Reading Panel released a report that summarized a review of the research that supported reading instruction. The report was ordered by Congress to help parents, teachers, and policymakers identify key skills and methods central to reading achievement. The reading panel recommended phonemic awareness as one of 5 essential components of an effective reading program. In 2016, a second report came out that reviewed the research from 2000 to 2014. It again affirmed that we need to teach students to recognize and manipulate segments of sound in speech, or phonemic awareness. Let's take a closer look at some of the specific research on phonological and phonemic awareness. Phonological awareness in kindergarten is a strong predictor of reading success. Phonological awareness has been shown to be both a reliable predictor of reading achievement and a key to beginning reading. Even before a student learns to read, we can predict with a high level of accuracy whether that student will be a good reader or a poor reader by the end of 3rd grade and beyond. Phonological awareness is not only correlated with learning to read, but indicates a stronger statement is true. Phonological awareness appears to play a causal role in reading acquisition. Phonological awareness is a foundational ability underlying the learning of spelling-sound correspondence. Findings from several decades of research converge on the idea that most children who have difficulties learning to read have a core deficit in phonological awareness and related processing skills. Speaking of deficits, notice on this slide a representation of subgroups of poor readers. Although these circles are equal in size, pay close attention to the percentages of poor readers represented by each circle. 70 to 80% of poor readers have trouble with skilled reading that originates with weaknesses in phonological processing. Think about the implications of this slide, and you will realize just how important phonological awareness is, not only for beginning readers, but also for our struggling older students as well. The statistic on the last slide is staggering in its implications, but keep calm, I have good news. The research also shows that phonological awareness can be developed. Instruction in phonological awareness is beneficial for most children, but it seems to be critical for others. The degree of explicitness and systematic nature of instruction may need to vary according to the learner's skills, especially for students at risk for reading difficulties. Some 2-year-olds demonstrate phonological awareness. However, for most children, awareness begins between the ages of 3 and 4 and accelerates between the ages of 4 and 5. There are 2 main ways to develop phonological awareness: through indirect activities and through direct instruction. We will look at both ways as we analyze each type of phonological awareness activity in this training. This slide shows the progression of phonological awareness. The least complex activities are shown on the left. They are rhyming and alliteration, and they increase in complexity to the most complex activities which require students to manipulate phonemes. You will likely have students that range in their skill levels. There is no evidence in favor of or against the idea of matching instruction precisely to a child's current skill level, as opposed to starting groups of children at the same point or only teaching one level of the continuum. However, research does support the concept of teaching near the range of children's abilities and working on a couple of activities at a time. And of course, you will want to review previously mastered skills as well. So that means that teachers need to become proficient at all levels of the continuum and understanding which activities are more or less challenging. By the way, although you can certainly do phonological awareness activities in a whole group setting, research also supports small group instruction in which teachers can more closely monitor students during the activity, as well as more closely target where students' instruction needs to be. There are standards at every grade level for phonological and phonemic awareness. Take a look at the standards for preschool. Note where the preschool standards are on the progression of phonological awareness. Here are the standards for kindergarten. Note where most of the kindergarten standards fall on the progression. Finally, here are the standards for first grade. Note where first grade standards fall on the progression. Notice that by the end of first grade, students should have a good handle on the most complex activities. With the standards in mind, let's take a look at each level of phonological awareness. Pay close attention to where activities are on the continuum for the age level you teach. It is still good to become aware of activities above and below where your standards are, because of course your students will have varying abilities. Speaking of varying abilities, you may have some students who need to back up from the continuum to more basic sound discrimination skills. Some examples of more basic listening skills include listening for a sequence of sounds, such as ringing a bell and then clapping your hands, and having students tell the order they were heard. Another example is to say two words and have students identify if the words are the same or different. Finally, say a word and ask students to identify if the word is a long word or a short word. It is important to know that the National Reading Panel noted that the times listed in the studies that were reviewed were descriptive and not prescriptive. The studies did not look at the ideal amount of time that should be spent, but rather they looked at what effective phonemic awareness programs did. Keep in mind that your students in general, or particular students, may need more or less time per day throughout the year. The recommendation for preschool and transitional kindergarten is to embed phonological awareness activities throughout the day using indirect activities. In kindergarten and first grade, students should receive about 20 hours per year of direct instruction. This ends up being about a half an hour a week. Of course, more will be needed for students who show deficits. Fun games and songs can be used throughout the day to offer more time. 20 hours divided up into 180 days of school turns out to be about 6 to 7 minutes a day of direct instruction. But don't get hung up on the number of minutes. Use students' abilities to show phonemic awareness as your main indicator of what is needed in terms of instruction. Here are some things to keep in mind as you are developing phonological awareness lessons. Remember to target sounds and not letters. This should not be a phonics or spelling lesson, especially at the earliest levels. Predetermine the words that you will use. Knowing the words you plan to use during the lesson will be more effective than trying to think of them on the spot. Phonological awareness is effective in small groups. Not only will the teacher be able to target the activity to the needs of the small group, but the teacher will be able to monitor the students' responses more closely. Begin with easier skills on the phonological progression, and as students master those skills, move on to more complex skills. Remember to go back and review previously mastered skills occasionally. Find ways to structure activities for active participation. More ideas on this will be coming up. Be careful with the language that you use when you first introduce a new skill. Don't ask students to tell the first sound they hear when they may not even fully understand what a sound is. Rather, embed directions as you model new activities for students. For example, we are going to listen for the first sounds today. Let's practice with our names. My name is Smith. Smith. The first sound in Smith is S. What is the first sound in Smith? This helps students understand both the directions and the activities at the same time. Okay, now let's look at specific examples of how to develop phonological awareness at each level. Rhyming words are words that sound the same at the end of the word. Bed and red rhyme because they both have ed at the end of the word. There are many, many books that have text that rhymes. Keep reading those books. Point out rhyming words as they occur in the text, after a section, or return to the text when you are done reading the book to identify the rhyming words. Encourage students to help fill in the rhyming words as they begin to understand how rhyming words work in the text. Many nursery rhymes and familiar children's songs rhyme. Sing all those fun songs with students. Point out the rhyming words as they occur, or perhaps write some new verses with students. More direct instruction for rhyming words can be to say two words. If the words rhyme, students can show thumbs up. If they do not rhyme, students should show thumbs down. For example, care, bear, thumbs up. Kite, height, thumbs up. Phone, mouse, thumbs down. As students become more skilled at rhyming, new activities can be done that promote rhyming, such as tossing a ball and saying a word, bat. Everyone who catches the ball after that has to say another word that rhymes. Sat, hat, fat, mat. Move on to a new word when rhymes are exhausted or a student cannot think of a rhyme. Alliteration is stringing together two or more nearby words with the same initial sound. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. There are many fun books that use alliteration. Read those books and point out all of the alliteration that takes place in them. You can have students help you create alliterative phrases and sentences. Start small with only 2 words. Use students' names for personal connections. For example, Sue smiles. Then expand the sentences to be a little bit longer. Sue swims slowly. Finally, create a longer sentence such as, Sue sold 6 sausage sandwiches. You can provide sentence frames to help students. Remember, this will be only verbal, so although you can see some sentence frames on the slide, you would not show those sentence frames to students. Picture cards or real objects can be displayed. Ask students to identify which words begin the same. In this case, banana and boy begin the same. Sentence segmentation is the ability to discriminate the words in a sentence. In the sentence, there are stars in the sky. There are 6 words. I like to use student models to help with these activities. Have 7 students stand in a line. Use fun and familiar sentences such as, 5 little monkeys jumped on the bed. Have each student in line step forward as they each say one word in the sentence. Another fun way to have lots of students participate, and it's a great transition activity, is to have everyone march the sentence. As students are moving from one area of the room, say from the carpet to their desks, students can say each word in a sentence as they take a step towards where they are moving. Make sentence segmentation interactive by providing each student with a shaker or rhythm sticks, or simply have them use their hands to clap or tap. Have students tap out the words in a sentence. For example, I love my white shoes. Other fun phrases to use from books are, brown bear, what do you see? Or how about this one? Run, run, as fast as you can. You can draw lines on the board or a sheet of paper to show where words would go. Point to each line as you say a word in a sentence. In this example, the sentence could be, my mother loves to eat pizza. Start with smaller sentences and build to longer ones. Finally, provide students counters and have them move the counters up for each word in the sentence. For example, give the students 2 counters each. Have them line up the counters and move each counter forward as they say each word in the sentence. For 2 counters, an example of a sentence could be, Mary bakes. Students can move 1 counter up as they say Mary, and the other counter up as they say bakes. The next level of phonological awareness moves to the word level and the division of words into syllables. A syllable is a unit of pronunciation containing only 1 vowel sound. Shown on the slide are some divisions of syllables in words. One way to help students understand syllables is by having them hold the palm of their hand just under their chin. Have students count the number of times their chin hits their hands as they say a word. Try it with the words on the screen. Melt, robot, banana, alligator. Keep reading fun books that emphasize syllables in words. They're a little harder to find, but they are out there. There are lots of name games that emphasize syllables in words too. Hickety-pickety and Up the Ladder are 2 of my favorites. Hickety-pickety bumblebee, who can say a name for me? Maricela. Now say it. Maricela. Now whisper it. Maricela. Now clap it. Maricela. Another favorite is Up the Ladder. Up the ladder, down the ladder, one by one the ladder. Up the ladder, down the ladder, one by one the ladder. My name is Marty. And the rest of the class can point to Marty and say, his name is Marty. Go around the circle until everyone has had a chance to segment their name into syllables. Similar to tapping or shaking words in a sentence, students can tap or shake syllables in short phrases. Again, use familiar phrases for fun, such as, that's what it's all about, and chicka chicka boom boom, will there be enough room? And how about this one? We're going on a bear hunt. We're going to catch a big one. What a beautiful day. We're not scared. At this level of phonological awareness, students can begin to play with the parts of words a little bit too. For example, if the word is cowboy, you could have students take away a syllable in the word. Tell them, say the word cowboy, but don't say the word cow. Students should respond by saying boy. Move on to manipulating other words besides compound words too, as students get more skilled at this activity. Remember, some of the activities that were previously presented can also be used for phonological awareness activities, such as moving counters. Provide students with 2 counters. Have them move 1 counter for each syllable in the word. For example, the word is market. Students can move 1 counter as they say mar, and the other counter as they say ket. Move students on to more complicated tasks related to syllables, including syllable completion. Have students look at pictures or other real objects and finish the syllable. Students could respond with key. Kit, students should respond with 10. Have students add beginning syllables too. For example, finish the word et. Students could supply plan to make the word planet. Or stir. Students should supply ham. A more complex activity would be for students to identify syllables that are the same. Which part of the word is the same? Garden, garbage. Students should identify that gar is the same in both words. Students can also delete a syllable. Say the word rocket without rock. Students should say et. Say the word monster without mon. Students should say stir. Another level of phonological awareness activities are onsets and rhymes. An onset is the portion of a syllable that precedes the vowel. The rhyme, R-I-M-E, not to be confused with rhyme, R-H-Y-M-E, is the vowel and any letters beyond. Here are some examples of onset and rhyme. In the word cat, the onset is k and the rhyme is at. In the word shark, the onset is sh and the rhyme is ark. Here are 2 more examples of onset and rhyme. In the word coat, the onset is k, the rhyme is oat. And in the word 3, the onset is thr, the rhyme is e. Here are onsets and rhymes shown in a multisyllable word. Notice there are several onsets and rhymes because the word has multiple syllables. You may have guessed that I would suggest fun literature as a way to reinforce onset and rhyme in words. Keep reading those fun books. Play a game of I Spy with onset and rhyme. I spy with my little eye a air. Students must look around the room and name the object you spy. A chair. Or, I spy with my little eye a clock. A clock. Provide visual support and choice to students when first introducing the concept of onset and rhyme. Display picture cards or real object choices. Then say, I'm thinking of a word that begins with p and ends with n. Students should identify the word you were thinking of was the pen. Or you can reverse the activity and show students an object and have them provide the onset and rhyme. What is the onset of this word? P. What is the rhyme? Ig. Okay, so now that we have discussed all the activities before phonemic awareness, let's take a quick look back at the progression. Hopefully now you know a little more about each activity. You also should have a better sense of how this progression begins with the largest units of sound and gets smaller and smaller. Next, we're going to move on to the most complex level of phonological awareness, phonemic awareness. You can see by looking at the progression that there are a number of activities that fall under phonemic awareness. That is because phonemes are the smallest units of sound, and this level has to do with students' ability to manipulate those individual sounds. Let's get started. Phonemic awareness is the understanding that spoken words are made up of sequences of individual sounds and the ability to hear and manipulate the sounds in spoken words. Phonemes are the smallest unit of language and they have no inherent meaning. Although it is still only oral, phonemic awareness is foundational to reading and writing. It is not phonics where letters get attached to sounds, but is fundamental to the mapping of speech to print. Let's look at some ways phonemes can be manipulated. Individual phonemes can be isolated or identified, segmented into individual parts, blended together, deleted, substituted, and counted. You can also add phonemes to form words too. For example, add m to the beginning of an to get man. An awareness of phonemes is necessary to grasp the alphabetic principle that underlines our system of written language. If children understand that words can be divided into individual phonemes and that phonemes can be blended into words, they will be able to use the letter sound knowledge to read and build words. As a consequence of this relationship, phonemic awareness in kindergarten is a strong predictor of later reading success. This first chart shows different skills that can be done with the word sun. Here's another example using the word chat. Let's take a look at some of the research that has been done specifically on phonemic awareness. Research indicates that phonemic awareness is the best predictor of the ease of early reading acquisition, better than IQ, vocabulary, and listening comprehension. Poorly developed phonemic awareness skills distinguish low socioeconomic preschoolers from their more advantaged peers. The degree of phonemic awareness that a child has developed upon entry to school is widely held to be the strongest single determinant of the child's reading success. The level of phonemic awareness that a child possesses accounts for as much as 50% of the variance in reading proficiency by the end of grade 1. Again, keep calm. I have more good news. Phonemic awareness does not occur automatically for most children, but they acquire it when teachers purposefully support it and provide the assistance that each child needs. Research links some reading failure to insufficiently developed phoneme awareness skills. Intervention research clearly demonstrates the benefits of explicitly teaching phoneme awareness. That means that this is something we have control over to develop. So if phonemic awareness is the best predictor of reading success, shouldn't we put all of our time and effort into developing it? Well, the research suggests that different children need different amounts and forms of phonemic awareness instruction and experiences. Also, we cannot give so much attention to phonemic awareness that other important components of a literacy program are left out or abandoned. Phonemic awareness is essential, but not the only component of a reading program. Let's take a closer look at phonemes now. There seems to be some slight variations on how researchers count phonemes, but most agree that there are between 42 and 46. Remember that phonemes are the individual sounds, so there may be more than one way to spell each phoneme. So phonemic awareness is the ability to manipulate each of these sounds. Phonemes can be divided into two basic categories: phonemes that make continuous sounds and those that make stop sounds. Continuous sounds are sounds that are easier to exaggerate and prolong to heighten the sound input. The sound can be held for several seconds without distortion. S or m are examples of continuous sounds. Stop sounds are sounds that can only be produced for an instant. It is hard to hold them. Be careful not to add an unintended vowel sound when producing stop sounds, which often happens when trying to hold them. B and t are examples of stop sounds. H and w are not stop sounds, but are challenging to articulate without distorting the sound. Note that adult speakers often enunciate sounds differently based on their dialect patterns and personal speech habits. This can make it difficult for a struggling child to hear the words that the adult is trying to say. When an adult has different dialect than the child, special care must be taken to enunciate the phonemes clearly and distinctly. Some experts suggest that training for at-risk children must be more explicit or more intense than what typically is described in the research literature. So what are some good places to begin with students, especially at-risk students? Here are a few ideas. Start with initial sounds. They are generally easier for students to distinguish. Begin with words that contain continuous sounds. The word Sam has 3 continuous sounds that can be stretched to help students hear each of the sounds in the word. Start with one-syllable words and build to longer words. And be sure to model each activity when it is first introduced. Phoneme isolation is the ability to isolate individual sounds in a word. An identity is the ability to recognize the same sound in different words. An easy activity to start with is to show students pictures or real objects and ask the students, is this a mog, sog, or dog? Thumbs up, thumbs down is an interactive way to monitor students. Students show thumbs up for yes and thumbs down for no. Do you hear d in dog? Thumbs up. Do you hear d in sit? Thumbs down. Activities can work with the position of the phonemes too. What is the beginning sound in log? L. Or more complex, what is the last sound in log? G. There are many fun songs that can be found with a simple internet search. For example, listen to this one to the tune of Old MacDonald. What's the sound that starts these words? Turtle, teeth, and time. T is the sound that starts these words. Turtle, teeth, and time. With a t, t here and a t, t there. Here a t, there a t, everywhere a t, t, t is the sound that starts these words. Turtle, teeth, and time. You can pick a new sound and make up a new song. Here is an old travel game that works with phoneme isolation. We're going on a trip and everything we take has to begin with m. I'm going on a trip. and I'm going to take a marker. Go around the group and have students say what they will bring on the trip. A fun activity to do with students is to give them each a picture card or a real object. Call out clues and have students identify who has the object or picture. For example, who has the picture that begins with D and ends with G? The student with the dog picture could shout out the word dog. You can play with the position of the sounds in words too. Do you hear T at the beginning or the end of the word pat? End. Which word does not have the same ending sound? Pat, sit, mop. Mop does not have the same ending sound as pat and sit. Ride a roller coaster is an excellent activity for isolating medial sounds that are often a little harder for students to hear. Take your hand and use it to motion a large hill in front of you. As you do it, say the sounds of a 3-phoneme word, such as the word cat. Your hand should reach the tallest point in the hill as you say the medial sound at. K, at. This provides a great kinesthetic way for students to identify medial sounds in words. In this complex activity, the next person has to say something they want for their birthday that begins with the last sound of the previous word. For my birthday, I want a ball. Since ball ends with l, the next person would have to say something that begins with l. For my birthday, I want a Lego. This is a very complex activity, so be sure students have a good grip on isolating sounds in all positions before attempting this one. Here is where we get to the heart of the matter. Blending is the ability to put sounds together to form a word. Segmenting is the ability to segment or take apart words into individual sounds. Blending and segmenting are opposites of each other, and they go hand in hand. Many activities that are described next can be reversed to accomplish the other task. Model blending on chart paper or the board by drawing 3 lines, or more if there are more sounds in the word. Point to each line as you segment the sounds of the word. B, e, g. Run your finger under the lines as students blend the sounds together to say the word beg. Here is another word. T, e, n. Students should say 10. Here's an example of words with 4 phonemes. P, e, n, e. Students should say penny. Let's try one more. A, n, d. Students should say hand. Segmenting is the opposite of blending. It is dividing a word into individual sounds. Segmenting is a segue to phonetic spelling or sounding it out. If you have ever seen phonetic spelling, you know how important this concept is and how developed or underdeveloped it is in children by looking at their spelling. Kinesthetic activities and moving manipulatives work well for segmentation activities. Start with shorter words, but move to multisyllabic words. Alconen boxes are often used to provide students with a visual for segmenting words. In this kinesthetic activity, students move manipulatives, such as counters, from below the boxes into each box as the sound is made. Let's look at an example of the one using the word cheese. Move 1 counter for each sound into the box. Ch, e, s, cheese, cheese. Let's try another one. This time, let's use the word coat. You can switch the vowel sound to another color counter to draw attention to a medial sound or a vowel sound. Coat. K-O-T. Coat. Coat. Don't forget to have some fun even with these more complex phonemic awareness activities. Segment words with the whole group by tossing a ball to a student and having him say the first sound. He can toss the ball to someone else and have her say the second sound. She can toss a ball to the third student who says the last sound. All three students can blend the sounds together at the end. Provide a visual of what you are doing by giving students a slinky and having them stretch the slinky as they segment the word. By the way, inexpensive plastic slinkies can often be found in the party favors section of stores at a reasonable price, so that way you can provide one for each student in your group. Play-Doh works well for this activity too. Let's pause to talk for a moment about why blending and segmenting in particular are foundational for reading success. Segmenting and blending is what students have to be able to do quickly and effortlessly when reading words. Now that you know more about them, can you see why, if blending and segmenting are not fully developed, older students may be having reading difficulties? Let's look at a quote from Louisa Moats about this specifically. Awareness of the separate speech sounds enables children to make a mental map of the correspondences between the letters in the printed words and the sounds that they represent. So although there are only a couple of slides on blending and segmenting, this type of manipulation is the level students need to be most comfortable at. You'll remember I called blending and segmenting the heart of the matter on the first slides. Okay, finally we are at the most advanced level of phonemic awareness. Phoneme manipulation. These activities are just like they sound. Deletion is taking a phoneme away from a word. Addition is adding a phoneme to a word. Substitution is replacing a phoneme in a word. Let's think for a moment about what substitution is in the initial position. Of course, it is creating rhyming words. But substitution can be made more challenging by changing ending sounds and medial sounds. In phoneme addition activities, students are asked to add phonemes to a word. For example, what do you get if you add to 8? Rate. Or, what do you get if you add p to ill? Pill. Phoneme deletion activities have students subtracting phonemes from a word. These are easiest for students when a real word remains, but move students to be able to delete a phoneme and have only part of a word remain. What do you get when you take away sh from shape? Ape. What do you get if you delete f from fill? Ill. What do you get when you delete p from pack? Ack. There are some fun books that play with phoneme manipulation. Here is one of my favorites that is sure to make your class laugh. Be sure to check some out. What's Missing has students identify what sound was deleted from a word. For example, what do you hear in seat that is not in eat? S. Substitution is the ability to change one phoneme in a word for another. Eventually, we want students to be able to change phonemes in all positions of the word, but begin with the initial phoneme in the word. Substitute initial phonemes in songs by substituting repetitive words. Take a familiar song such as Row, Row, Row Your Boat and substitute the initial phoneme in all the main words from the song. For example, Here is row, row, row your boat, substituting the main words with b. Bow, bow, bow your boat gently down the stream. Barely, 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 life is but a dream. Don't forget to keep reading those fun books that play with sounds. There are a lot of fun songs and poems that play with sounds too. Willaby wallaby woo, an elephant sat on you. Willaby wallaby wee, an elephant sat on me. Then substitute students' names in the song. Willaby wallaby weeder, an elephant sat on Peter. Willaby wallaby Willie, an elephant sat on Billy. Choose a sound of the day. For example, t. Have students change their names to begin with that sound. So Daniel would become Taniel. A couple of notes to consider if you're going to use this activity. Be sure to preview what word names will become. You don't want any inappropriate words to be said in class. And also, be sure to be aware of students and cultures who may be sensitive to having their names changed. A great activity to do when beginning sound substitution, or if students are having difficulty with sound substitution, is to use silly or non-real words. Display 3 pictures or objects and say a nonsense word with the beginning sound substituted. In this case, you could say, I see a cow. The pictures help support students in the sound substitution. Students would identify the word shell as the word that it becomes when substituting the initial sound in kell. Don't forget that, as was shown with blending and segmenting words, lines can be used for placeholders for sounds. Blend this word, at. Now draw an additional line. Be sure to point to each placeholder line as you move through the manipulation activities. Add s to the beginning of at. S, at, sat. Change s in sat to at, mat. Change t in mat to p, map. Change in map to app, cap. Change p in cap to can. Delete k from can. An. This is the level to which we want students to get to in phonemic awareness, the ability to manipulate sounds in all positions of a word. Research mentioned at the beginning of this presentation indicated that phonemic awareness activities should be conducted at a level close to where students are. So this requires assessment to figure out where students are and what they still need to work on. Assessments should be used to monitor student progress and to identify students who are at risk for acquiring beginning reading skills. Student progress can be formally and informally monitored, but formal assessments usually begin about halfway through kindergarten and are then used through first grade or until students show full phonological awareness and are fluently reading. Monitoring tools used need to be strongly predictive of future reading abilities and separate low and high performers. They should be sensitive to change as students begin to show mastery of one of the levels of the progression. They should also have alternative forms. This means that several lists of words should be provided for each activity so that if students do not show mastery of a particular level and you need to give the assessment again, there are different words than the students heard the first time they were given the assessment. There are many phonological or phonemic awareness assessments available. Here are a few common assessments. However, your reading program or your school probably already has one that you use. Be sure that the one you use has the components listed on the previous slide. Here are a few things to keep in mind as we wrap up this training. Phonological awareness activities are not a complete reading program. This is just one component of a reading program that provides essential foundational knowledge in the alphabetic system. But other components must be a part of a comprehensive reading program for students to become skilled readers. Teachers need to closely monitor students' successes and challenges, both through formal and informal assessments, in order to ensure that this foundational skill is fully developed. Remember that struggling readers may lack phonological awareness, so if you have older students who are struggling with reading, be sure to assess and then work to develop phonological awareness with those students. Finally, a handout file is attached to this presentation that provides a description of the activities from this presentation. This can be used as you develop lessons and plan for activities. So, now it is your turn to go back to your classrooms and be sure you are working fully to develop phonological and phonemic awareness in your students. Their reading success depends on it.